questions, then John, we're good? All right. One thing that I honestly did not expect is that I think these two presentations will flow from one to each other, to the other very well. And again, it is my pleasure to introduce Jonathan Lau, who has attended this event for several years now, and who this year decided to see, hey, if all of us can do this and be a speaker, he can be a speaker too. John?
Okay then. What Mikhail just said echoes my sentiments exactly here. This is going to be stunningly continuous. And every year it surprises me when these presentations flow so seamlessly into each other, even though we don't share a whole lot of information with him about exactly what we're going to talk about. My talk is, I'm Jonathan Lau, and my talk was adapted from one I prepared originally for a seminar presented at the University of California, Berkeley, called Silent Archives. And as Mikhail said, I've attended this convention many years in the past, including 4 symposia with my father, who passed away recently this last year. So, yeah. And I do have a disclaimer that there's going to be some talk of torrenting in this, and no one here endorses that. Or at least not officially. There's not, to my mind, a single presentation at this year's symposium that doesn't inherit core elements from the realm of critical theory, which influences the other speaker who was supposed to be here, feminist theory, and so many aspects of everything we talk about. For our purposes, critical theory, as it is often applied, might best be understood as the dissolution of the implicit or the self-evident. And taking this presentation as one example, we learned that discussions of transmedia and media mix complicate where the film text begins or ends. That the discussions that a film prompts and the merchandise it inspires allows for the critical expansion of what is often implicitly regarded as a singular viewing experience into a vastly more complex dialogic system. Within the school of thought known as social informatics, which is in many ways an offshoot of critical theory, we find this expansion of information beyond the self-evident to manifest itself most profoundly in the form of an expanded terminology. That is, viewers become relabeled as social actors, and the media they engage with through processes directed in part by the wider systems, cultures, and institutions wherein these engagements take place become redefined by what Rob Kling calls socio-technical interaction networks. Keeping this relationship in mind, Stephen Brown, editor of the book Cinema Anime, offers a useful starting place for the critical reassessment of our implicit understanding of viewing and how our tendency to treat anime as a unitary textual experience is complicated by what he terms the multiplicity of the screen. Brown prefaces his volume by commenting on a widely deployed trope of anime scholarship, that is, the tendency for scholars to begin with the question, what is anime? He responds by proposing an alternative question, which in many ways is a transmedia adaptation question. Where is the anime screen? By asking where instead of what, writes Brown, by situating anime in relation to a screen, the question suggests that anime is nothing apart from the spaces of viewing and the technologies of projection or illumination that are utilized for the purposes of screening anime. The screens of anime for Brown are hardly singular or univocal. Behind me, and this is severely cut down, he goes into all of the different ways we watch anime on computers, on iPods, cell phones, and those sorts of things. And he concludes by expanding his proposal, where else is the anime screen? Although Brown's question is an undeniable step in the right direction, what will hopefully become clear over the course of this presentation is that both the digital and material narratives of anime have a great deal less to do with the very literal screens on which they're viewed than with the variegated surfaces across which they are experienced. Building upon Brown's rhetoric, we might then ask, where else is the anime surface? I propose that the visual surface of anime may exist and extend beyond the screen, and that these expanded surfaces offer new points of study. Moreover, it is my assertion that these surfaces, quite often visual and technological in nature, form nodes at the center of social exchange within a wider socio-technical interaction network. By considering where the surfaces of anime reside, by critically redefining them as social in nature, with a necessary human component, we begin to dissolve our preconceptions of what it means to view anime. The remainder of my talk is divided into 3 sections. I begin with the physical surfaces of anime, move to the digital ones, and conclude with the title of the talk, the archival surfaces of anime. At the heart of my discussion of the physical surface of anime is the exchange of physical media. The physical surface of anime may be seen to specifically include those aspects of an expanded material culture, such as those addressed by formulations of the media mix. However, more broadly defined, it is comprised of the physical and visual aspects of the anime work that extend beyond the screen, structuring our engagement outside of the work itself. Susan Napier, author of Anime from Accurate to Princess Mononoke, begins her book with an acknowledgement. The interpersonal material exchange Napier describes here implicates her as a social actor, and subsequently occasioned a transmedia experience for her. She read the manga and then went to see the film. However, more than this, we see how the surface of the filmic text may be seen to extend back to the surface of the manga, how a screen of anime can become entangled and not meaningfully separable from a socio-material exchange. And here is the Blu-ray that I was going to bring and sort of neglected to bring. The interpersonal material exchange, regarding scholarship more broadly though, perhaps especially leveled at Napier, Jonathan Clements criticizes very, very heavily in his book Animate History the nature of that sort of narrative among scholars to begin with these moments of contact. Clements writes that the history of Japanese animation often assumes a teleological aspect, focused implicitly through the gaze of the foreign viewer, as if everything must somehow build towards the viewer's first anime experience. While Clements suggests such thinking leads only to the writing of bad histories, Tom Lamar, author of the very well-respected Anime Machine, situates himself in much the same position as Napier and at the same moment in time. Lamar's description stresses how and why issues of access in a historical moment most closely entwined with conditions of the physical surfaces of anime so often brings narratives like Napier's to the forefront of scholarly inquiry. They are a precursor to it. The physical means of exchange and technologies of viewing Lamar and Napier described, the VHS tape, the manga, the theater, echo and extend Brown's conceptualization of the screens of anime by highlighting the social dimensions that contribute to the viewing of the work. Lamar later extends this importance of video technology and its exchangeability and its possessibility to an idea that we can alter our viewing habits by stopping, rewinding, fast-forwarding, or slowing down the anime text to appreciate it on a frame-by-frame basis. And here I wish to knit together these relationships that seem so integral to the foundation of anime scholarship. This is a field that began very much so in this 90s moment, and highlight that both fan and scholar found themselves implicated as actors within this socio-material narrative, at the center of which resided the physically distributable surfaces of anime. And looming at the end of Lamar's passage is the rise of the internet, where we really turn our attention here now to the digital surface. While certainly there exist countless more physical surfaces of anime, such as the museum exhibition that I displayed earlier, which was held in Kobe this past fall, the digital surface can be seen to include the work itself specifically. Mediated by the screen but not contained by it, the digital surface permits of a visual contiguity that has the potential to dissolve the visual frames that separate anime conceptually from its social aspects, to collapse all that is present within the screen into an extended surface of the work. Chronologically, the digital surface serves in many respects to supplant the dominant 1990s narrative of material exchange with new stories of contact and new experiences of viewing. More than this, however, the digital surface alters our patterns and behaviors of viewing, much as the VHS tape did, and where scholars and their works intersect these patterns. The digital surface has some unique features over this interpersonal exchange of material, artifacts, VHS tapes, and manga, in that the digital surface formalizes this relationship, it structures it, and it significantly documents and records itself. Videos and links are posted online, websites are become indexed, and the social aspects of anime are made manifest via commentaries and other media postings. Within the wider scholarship on anime, the value of these user-generated commentaries is considered unevenly. While fan scholars such as Mizuko Ito, who was presented here before, among others, utilize commentaries, blog postings, and chat room data to construct more complete pictures of online fan communities, others such as Perper and Kornog, who were commentators in Macadamia Volume 5, offer a highly critical reading of the same materials. After 3 years, no one cares what someone calling himself Quadbog6 thought of Volume 2 of Death Note. It's yesterday's news, writes Perper. While it is obvious that scholars often intersect fans by way of media postings and that there is some debate as to how useful these postings are, an understanding of the systems that shape those commentaries is essential. In other words, the modes of participation conditioned by the division of the expanded anime surface must be taken into consideration. If we take, for example, something I'm sure you're all very familiar with, the website Netflix.
Oh, that you meant sword art.
Okay.
There is a sword art theme running through this, but we see a system that by design bifurcates the extended surface of anime into distinct social and asocial parts. The viewing of the work occurs on one page. Recommendations accomplished via algorithm, not necessarily by interpersonal exchange, occur on another. And reviews are sealed away entirely on a fourth page concealed by a third. You have to click details to get to that page. While it is evident that social activity is still taking place, there are reviews here. This activity exists at a visual remove from the work itself. It's not occupying the same space. And it engages with the series, that is, in this case, Sword Art, qualitatively as a whole, rather than on an episode-by-episode basis. Clicking the large play button forcefully removes conflicting visual elements from the screen, further isolating the work. Unlike most other streaming websites, there's no option to watch in a windowed mode on Netflix. Contrasting this design modality with another streaming media giant, Hulu, we see that the social aspects of viewing anime exist as an extension of the anime surface in the form of a comments section at the episode level. However, the comments, as I think you'll notice, are very, very, very far away from the work through this visual barrier of videos that you might also like to watch. And notably, this is a product of what's called a recommender system. Netflix began developing this in 2007, and other companies, of course, have used big data to accomplish this more recently. But what this does is it isolates these works by publisher and by year more than any other category, including genre. So the works you are recommended here are very unlikely to be the most relevant anime, and they're probably not more than a couple of years old. Pagani and Mirabello describe this arrangement as top-down, or publisher-first in nature. The next website I want to consider briefly is the streaming website Crunchyroll.com, which again, I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with. Depending on one's browser size, the comments section of Crunchyroll can be brought into visual continuity with the frame of the video almost immediately, at no significant visual remove from the work itself. And the somewhat problematic recommended category is off to the side and further down the page somewhere. Significantly, in keeping with Lamar's assertion that video technology permitted a fundamentally new way to view anime, streaming video introduces a new and highly social process, what I term here the staged viewing. The idea of the staged viewing and how the digital surface of the streaming video website structures this viewing is perhaps best understood when compared to the Sino-Japanese hand scroll. Presenting a description of the hand scroll by the Western scholar Jerome Silvergill, noted Chinese art historian Wu Hong establishes that the commonly agreed upon features of the hand scroll include a specific set of dimensions ranging from a single work to a work of great length when unrolled, situated within a material framework that structures viewing, a process described by Silvergill as, quote, viewed from right to left as one reads in Chinese, unrolling a bit at a time from the roller and transferring the excess to a loose roll temporarily maintained around the stretcher on the right. Wu Hong expands upon this basic definition, saying, quote, We may add that after viewing such a painting, the spectator rolls it back to the beginning of the scroll. This can be done quickly and mechanically, but some connoisseurs prefer to combine it with a reversed reading of the picture from left to right, while halting now and then to review some details of specific interest. Moreover, he notes that traditional Chinese definitions of what are commonly called hand scrolls divide them into two categories. These are very firm linguistic categories. The Hongjichuan, a horizontal scroll, and the Hongduhua, a horizontal hanging picture. He says that this smaller format, a Hongduhua, has the potential to grow into a Hongjihuan when colophons are increasingly attached to it. A colophon is a written commentary. Even though it was originally created as a single framed painting, not as a multi-framed hand scroll. We'll get back to anime very quickly here. If we overlay these spatiotemporal structures on the streaming surface of anime, an astonishing correspondence emerges. Where the viewing of a hand scroll is noteworthy for the complexity and the interaction of its parts, how the architecture it provides for viewing is accommodated to the human body. Hand scrolls are read at roughly an arm's width. How it serves to record owners and viewers through time by way of established systems of seal impressions, that is, you take your stamp and you mark it after you've read it, and how it permits of nearly endless additions in the form of those comments or colophons. Looking to a diagrammatic view of the functioning of a video streaming website like Crunchyroll, we see that if in a slightly different arrangement, many of the parts described for a hand scroll are present. This little box here at the bottom. It only takes a bit of rearranging to complete the comparison. Of course, I do not wish to overextend this assertion. Maybe I do. I'm an art historian by nature, and this is my thing. I haven't actually photoshopped this image much. I just added rollers to the sides of an anime that was already sort of adapting visually the hand scroll format. Drawing some conclusions from this comparison, it may be said that streaming websites which allow for comments on the episode level permit viewers to engage in a staged reading, where the work in situ, that means in place, is viewed, and then the community present within the contiguous surface of the work is engaged with at no significant remove, that is, a secondary reading takes place. The additional presence of the spoiler tag feature that I'm sure most people are familiar with on sites like YouTube or Crunchyroll, that is, for those who aren't aware, the option to hide a comment that contains spoiler elements to the plot, occasions even a third potential way to look at these readings. The work in situ is acknowledged, then comments are scanned. So before you begin watching, you scroll down to see if there's any kind of hype going on about this episode or something like that. And then the work is viewed, and you go back and review the spoilers afterwards. As with the Hongjihuan variety of the hand scroll, the appending of comments to the work over the course of viewing allows the work itself, the expanded surface of the anime, to grow. The personalized nature of comments, accompanied by user icons and other sorts of usernames and those sorts of things, enables this expansion to take on an aspect of mark making or inscription. Conceptually, these expanded works are necessarily, I think, distinctive from their unexpanded original forms. The work itself and the comments are treated as one and the same. And while I probably have time, I'm going to skip through this section on Toonami, which, for reference, I believe quite strongly to be the first streaming anime website beginning in 2001. Jonathan Clemens has a timeline that I skipped through earlier, and he placed Digital Media Mart, a Japanese website, as the first site. But they only had adult-oriented content the year he claimed they began streaming anime. So we move finally to the archival surface. Unlike the digital surface, the archival surface of anime conceals the presence of the work and functions in the background of these social systems. The anime text within the archival surface is abstracted into descriptions and component parts. These elements are placed into taxonomic categories in order to visual hierarchies. In the fall of 2014, when licensing concerns led to the removal of a somewhat ironically titled anime, the hand scroll you saw earlier, The Mystic Archives of Dantalion, or Dantalion no Shouka, from Crunchyroll.com by publisher Kadokawa, the accreted commentaries that had expanded the work disappeared with it. The forum topics remain, but everything that appeared below the work is now gone. It can't even be recovered via indexed versions of the website. Licensing concerns in particular, the business aspects of anime, highlight the instability of a work within the expanded confines of the digital surface, and while changing technologies and means of engagement ensure the near impossibility of the development of a universally consistent model for appreciating such works, there is yet this third category, the archival surface. And for reference, you can't buy the Mystic Archives of Dantalion anywhere. It's out of print. It is, however, downloadable, and again, I don't encourage people to do so. I was working on it at the time it went away, so I found out that way that this website exists. BakaBT .me, I believe this is after Macedonia released the license to .me, and specifically the more modern, anybody can get a .me domain category of web domain. ME used to stand for Macedonia as a region code, like JP or DE or FR, but now it, I think, is just free. They don't have enough, if they don't have enough people that live in Macedonia to require their own domain. But BakaBT began life as boxtorrents.com in 2003. It's actually quite an old website. The BT in BakaBT stands for Box Torrents. They merged at some point later in the 2000s with a very hazy entity that I couldn't track down to become BakaBT.com. In 2011, it was believed the US-based domain was at risk for seizure due to copyright infringement. And so they moved to the .me domain. BakaBT is an unusual community. Their website boasts at the top of the page, and I don't know if this has changed in the last several days, but it was current as of last week. We have 145,404 registered users and are tracking 17,265 torrents, of which 0 are unseeded. That is to say that they have 17,000 files, and all of them are still available. This is unheard of for torrents. Their mission statement is concise, and I won't read the whole thing, but they say that there are many anime torrent websites, but BakaBT is unique. Its main reason that it's unique is because of its users. Old content is still available because of many dedicated seeders or providers of this content. And I believe them. That's an impressive track record. They do, however, caution that we should probably read the rules, and that these are simple and mostly common sense. They're very extensive. And specifically, a few things I want to highlight about these rules are that they constitute what I would term a preservation ethic. These rules have less to do with the site as such, code of conduct and things like that, but more things so that they don't piss anybody off. Works from Funimation are not allowed to be uploaded because Funimation has been very vigilant in tracking down its content wherever it should appear on the internet. Materials we might term loli or shota, that is underage content, is specifically legal here in Japan and the United States in anime form, but very, very illegal in the UK where most of their administrators are based, and so again, they don't want to incur anyone's wrath. And so these rules are structured to prevent friction with the powers that be. They have a second stage of guidelines that include the mandatory formation of taxonomies if one goes to upload works, that include elements such as a spoiler-free plot synopsis, which they recommend strongly you take from Anime Database or Anime News Network as kind of unofficial sister sites, and possible keywords that a video should have, such as quality, genre, fan subgroup, publisher, director, and so forth. Bitrate, codecs, subtitle information, translators, and screenshots that must not include spoilers, but must include at least one example of what the subtitles actually look like. The level of attention to detail in the construction of these taxonomies, this is a very elaborate chart, along with their stated goals to maintain the availability of these works, position BakaBT, at least in my view, firmly as an archive. And to that effect, Anderson and Allen, a couple of very diligent scholars who contributed an article to the American Archivist of 2009, reviewed extensive literature, very, very extensive, exhaustingly so, that was available as to models for an ideal archival commons, something like the archival equivalent of Wikipedia. And they proposed that no models existed that worked in the real world that satisfied their definitions. And of this extensive literature review, they picked a model called structuration by the scholar Anthony Giddens, whose theory in many respects predates the internet as we know it today. To me, Anderson and Allen here are really describing BakaBT as a utopic archival reality that already existed several years prior before they published their article. And looking specifically to how they cite Giddens on this yields even more interesting results. Giddens' theory of structuration has 3 parts, which we'll go through one at a time here in reverse order. Beginning with legitimation, which addresses the theoretical domain of normative behavior or regulation of human activities through legal or rule-based means. We've already seen how BakaBT is extensively rule-governed. The second stage, domination, which addresses the theoretical domain of resource authorization and allocation associated with how humans are able to wield power to affect change, covers a very unique feature of BakaBT in that it promotes its users, those who volunteer for this, into expanded social actors, the word we mentioned earlier, by allowing them to adopt a torrent. A user who adopts a torrent on BakaBT, and I don't know of any other website that permits of this, is one who gains no benefit from this except the ability to completely design the way the work is presented to the world. To quote the rules on their website, you adopt a torrent because the description of a torrent does not sit right with you, and you have the irresistible urge to fix it, to put it right and provide accurate information for future users of BakaBT who will chance upon said torrent. This is a very future-minded and not a very present-minded approach. The final stage here deals with how users actually do that, how they actually present these torrents. And there's a lot of variety. The work I showed earlier, The Mystic Archives of Dantalion, has 3 different pages for 3 different qualities of video, 3 different fan subtitles, 3 different plot synopses, and vastly different conceptualizations of how a web page should look. But they all share the elements that the larger website require of these pages. They have the codec, the bitrate, and all of the taxonomic information that lets these web pages function within the wider system. And I would propose more so that this particular process is an act of curation. That is, each individual is responsible for maintaining the torrent and presenting it, much the way a museum curator would. And this is where things get odd, because while BakaBT very definitely fits the model of an ideal decentralized archive, it's not exactly a stable one. A very recent post on their website suggested that they had been issued a large-scale DMCA takedown notice. This was, in reality, an April Fool's joke. but posted on the 31st of March, different time zones. But it highlights that this is a very believable thing. At any moment, this website, which is very much so in conflict with the powers that be, could be taken offline. Here they highlight what they feel their role would be. This is a joke, but they've obviously given this a lot of thought, that they would continue providing these taxonomies and these web pages in much the same way. This highlights just how much of a threat they're under. While nowhere near as great as a website like the Pirate Bay, which receives tens of thousands of DMCA takedowns every day, Google's Project Transparency highlights how many media holders ask them to remove content from BakaBT, or at least Google's role is to remove that content from their search parameters. So if you search the Mystic Archives of Dantalion and torrent, BakaBT probably won't show up in your browser. You can still find it by searching their website if you really want to watch it. But we see here another aspect of this instability, in that this very long list on the left side of the screen there are all of the content holders and all of the parties acting on behalf of the content holders who are around the web policing this stuff. And we come here to the end of my talk, so I'll open it up for questions. Sure.
I've got a mic, so, okay.
Front row first, I think.
My question is this.
Sure.
Could an anime virtual reality become so big, much like the film Surrogates starring Jackie Chan, that the line between anime and real life disappears? Basically, could anime become real, and would this be bad?
Surrogate starred Bruce Willis.
I'm actually going to field that one. Yes, I believe that if we existed in an expanded virtual reality, the anime surface would have to be redefined yet again. What we see here, and I had a slide earlier in the presentation that shows a close-in of this, is where even in anime, the line between reality and these surfaces, these screens, these digital realms, sword art is a fairly strong metaphor for that, is already blurred thematically. So obviously, I think it would just immediately extend into yes.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, you obviously have a very high IQ, and I can tell that, and I'm one IQ point below gifted, so I'm gonna have to ask you, why did you decide to do this? You could, mastermind wars, you could create lasting peace, you could build empires. Why do you feel the need to intellectualize everything?